Happy Monday, everybody. Here's hoping you had a great weekend. Listen, one of the most, I think, disheartening and disappointing things to come out of Helene in the last week or two, of course, is devastation, but then the human-created drama of misinformation.
It's awful.
Disinformation, and it's
way too much.
So upsetting and sickening. And so on a daily basis on our broadcast, we try to clarify some of these. And that's what we're going to do this morning, because for the last week, people across the country have been stepping in to help those impacted by Helene, doing good work.
But some posts on social media claim you need to register in order to transport items to some of those hardest hit areas. WCNC Charlotte's Jane Monreal verifies this claim for us this morning.
Our sources: North Carolina Department of Emergency Management, the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, and Lenoir County Emergency Services. In a Facebook post, Lenoir County Emergency Services says a sudden influx of donations directly into a disaster area can complicate and overwhelm recovery efforts. They shared a Facebook post that says if you're looking to transport supplies and donations to Western North Carolina, you're being asked to request permission from the North Carolina Department of Emergency Management. Our Verify team sent an email to the request line, and it says since the state of North Carolina is advising everyone not to travel into the affected region, emergency management cannot grant permission for or authorize access to individuals for travel. The North Carolina Department of Public Safety's website also details how people can donate supplies to the damaged areas. It states that individuals from outside storm damaged areas who are gathering supplies are urged to collect them, but not attempt to deliver them to Western North Carolina on their own. They say the needs vary from area to area and may change rapidly, and any uncoordinated efforts to deliver supplies can disrupt ongoing rescue efforts. So, while officials are not asking people to stop donating and collecting supplies for those affected by Helene, they are asking people to coordinate the donation of supplies with reputable organizations that can deliver those supplies quickly and safely to those who need it most.
And if there's something you'd like verified, just email us at verify@wcnc.com.
Weather impacts, we're dealing with another hurricane, unfortunately. This is the latest advisory just in a few minutes ago. Hurricane Milton, Category 3 hurricane. It's a major hurricane. Here we go. Still a pretty decent amount of distance away from Florida, especially somewhere, as you can see on the graphic right there, 180 miles northwest of Progreso, Mexico, which puts it about 600 miles from Tampa, Florida. Expected to continue to make a turn to the east and then a dramatic turn to the northeast over the next several days. The area, that's the Yucatan Peninsula. Right below that, that does include Cancun, Cozumel. They're going to be slammed with terrible winds, dangerous storm surge there, and then it takes that track, moves a little bit to the northeast. This is Wednesday morning at 2 a.m. Winds at 145 miles per hour. Chris and I were talking about this. It could easily become a Category 5 hurricane, then takes a turn, heading more up towards Tampa, St. Pete, and that area. Landfall could be somewhere near Tampa. You can see that cone of uncertainty takes a pretty wide distance. So that's where the impacts will be felt, especially over the right front quadrant just south of Tampa. Heavy winds, dangerous storm surge, just a terrible situation there after they've already been through the previous one. So we do have these hurricane warnings in effect for Fort Myers, Tampa, all the way south near the Florida Keys and north of Tampa. So that's a hurricane warning. Then major impacts, extreme impacts this is from the wind, as you can see, between Fort Myers and Tampa. Those areas, many of those areas already hit. And then storm surge anywhere from about 9 to 12 feet. That's another major issue they're going to be dealing with there across Florida, especially on the west coast there. And you can see some of the storm surge potential there. These are estimates anywhere from, I would say, south of Sarasota all the way down to Fort Myers, and then south of there, 9 to 12-foot storm surge. That's devastating. Locally, for us, I think just rip currents along the coastal sections, so anywhere from Hilton Head all the way up to Virginia Beach. And when you look at the list of hurricanes and tropical storms down to Milton. Next is Nadine. By the way, it doesn't end until November 30th, so we could go through every one of those names. Chris has some more about the situation right now with Milton. Chris?
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Larry. So we're waiting for the mic to come up. So the biggest deal that we're looking at right now is
that you're going to have Milton that is now up to 120 miles per hour. This is the 7 a.m. advisory. You usually don't have this, so the cone actually hasn't been updated. So what you're actually going to see is they're already kind of behind schedule. They were saying by noon today that it could be up to 150 miles per hour. Well, it's 7 a.m. and it's at 120. So actively going through rapid intensification, has that pinwheel defined eye wall. So that's why this data is actually outdated, where they're saying 145. Larry and I were discussing this. I wouldn't be surprised if it is going to be challenging. Category 5 strength. It would be our 42nd in hurricane history. Now, what's going to weaken this thing, or what is really against it? It's going to be wind shear, landfall, and dry air. Landfall is inevitable. That's going to be in the Gulf Coast area, western Florida. But dry air, not really much of an issue. This thing is so strong, it's actually blocking all the dry air off towards the north. Sometimes you can have some dry air start to work its way in the southeastern quadrant. That's not happening. So this is only going to get stronger. It's only going to get larger, and likely is going to have the span pretty much north to south, the size of Florida as far as the tropical storm winds go. As it is moving off towards the east, it's right in here that it's still in that favorable wind shear. I think that's where it's going to hit its peak. So this brings us to time about midnight, Tuesday night, heading into Wednesday morning. Once it gets a little bit closer to the Florida shoreline, it hits that red. That's that wind shear. So wind shear is the change of wind speeds with direction and height. As it goes up, it starts to cut up the development, and then once it moves back over to the Atlantic, it's going to dissipate because it doesn't have the right situation, the right setup. However, wouldn't be surprised if it goes in the middle of the Atlantic and becomes a hurricane once again after it drops to tropical storm strength. The steering currents is really unique. There's something called the polar jet stream and the tropical jet stream. Tropical jet stream is further down towards the south. This one right now is actually bending just down towards the south, but what it's going to do, it's going to move off towards the north and east. So that's why this is such a unique path that you usually don't see. It gets caught in that jet stream, and that's what's also going to make this fly across the state of Florida. That instead of it slowly drifting where flooding is more of a threat through rainfall, it still could easily dump up to 12 inches of rain, but it's not going to linger as much. We saw Charlie do this, Ian did this as well. They flew across the state, and that's going to be because of this jet stream right here. And the storm surge estimates, this is what we're really concerned about. Larry showed you this graphic, but I want to show you a little bit more detail. Depending where the storm is, it really doesn't matter. Even though it's Category 5 potentially at the peak, it still will have the storm surge as it bulges up. That'll crash it onshore. So even though the winds might technically weaken, we saw this with Katrina. Katrina became a Category 5, and then it went down to Category 3, but then still had the significant storm surge like it was much stronger. So I'm not comparing this to a Katrina event. I'm just letting you know it's a similar setup. So that's why this direction, more of a southwest to southeast instead of coming from the south, is a little bit more detrimental, because you can see a lot of those inlets around Florida. There's going to be a lot of flooding, significant storm surge, where I was following some of the Tampa meteorologists. They're saying this could be the worst storm if it directly hits them that they've seen in over 100 years.
You know, we talk about devastation here. This is going to be devastation there. This is the monumental task that FEMA has and our government has, is dealing with two of these amazing storms within a few days of each other. I mean, it's very sad.
And you said this is kind of the new normal now with how severe these storms can be.
Yeah, I think it's something we all need to prepare for. And if you live in these areas, I think a lot of people are going to make decisions, like you heard a lot of people in our mountain communities. It's so devastated they may move away. Yeah. I remember in Katrina, I think I mentioned this one time before, when Katrina hit, we had about 2,000, 3,000 people at the old Charlotte Coliseum, not Bojangles, but the one that was torn down off Tyvola. And I've run into so many people locally who stayed and
never went back.
Stayed, never went back. Yeah. So that's the situation.
And what, we have 2 more months left of hurricane season?
Exactly.
Okay. All right, folks, keep it here, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning.